It started as an innocent visit from family. I never imagined a casual decision to wear something as simple as a miniskirt could unravel everything. My nephew, Ethan, had always been sweet and respectful, and I had no reason to think this time would be any different. But the moment he walked into the room, I noticed it. A subtle change in his demeanor. A gaze that lingered just a moment too long. It sent a ripple through the atmosphere, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. I laughed it off initially. "It's just a skirt," I told myself, brushing away the nagging thoughts. But as the day unfolded, it became harder to ignore. Every time I moved, I felt his eyes on me. Not in a way that screamed disrespect, but with a curiosity that seemed unusual. I'd catch him quickly looking away when our eyes met, his cheeks flushing as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. It was unnerving, and yet, there was a strange tension in the air that neither of us addressed. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner, I couldn't help but notice how attentive Ethan was. He laughed at my jokes a little too eagerly, his gaze drifting toward me even when I wasn't speaking. It was subtle, but it was there. I started questioning myself. Was I imagining things? Or was there something deeper going on here? After dinner, I retreated to my room to escape the growing unease. I needed a moment to clear my head, to shake off the strange energy that had been building all day. But just as I began to relax, there was a knock at the door. It was Ethan. He said he needed to talk to me, his voice low and hesitant. I hesitated before letting him in, unsure of what to expect. He stood there, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact. Finally, he spoke, his words tumbling out in a rush. He confessed that seeing me in the skirt had stirred feelings he didn't understand, feelings that confused and embarrassed him. He begged me not to think poorly of him, to forgive him for the thoughts he couldn't control. I was stunned. My mind raced as I tried to process what he was saying. Part of me wanted to brush it off, to chalk it up to youthful confusion. But another part of me couldn't ignore the intensity in his eyes, the vulnerability in his voice. This was more than a passing moment of awkwardness. It was a revelation that had the power to change everything. I took a deep breath and told him we needed to set boundaries. I emphasized that it was natural to feel confused at times, but that it was important to respect each other and the roles we played in each other's lives. He nodded, his face a mixture of relief and embarrassment. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. Over the next few days, Ethan's behavior became more erratic. He seemed to oscillate between avoiding me entirely and finding excuses to be near me. I'd catch him staring at me from across the room, his expression unreadable. The tension between us grew heavier, and I couldn't ignore the effect it was having on me. I'd always seen myself as someone in control, but this situation was testing me in ways I hadn't anticipated. One afternoon, as I was preparing to leave the house, Ethan cornered me in the hallway. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his turmoil. He told me he couldn't stop thinking about me, that he didn't know how to handle the feelings overwhelming him. He pleaded with me to help him understand, to guide him through the storm he was navigating. I felt a mix of emotions, compassion, frustration, and a deep sense of responsibility. I told him again that these feelings were a phase, something he'd move past with time and distance. But as I spoke, I couldn't ignore the intensity in his gaze, the way his presence seemed to pull at something inside me. It was a dangerous line we were walking, and I knew I had to tread carefully. Ethan's behavior didn't go unnoticed by the rest of the family. They began to comment on how quiet he'd become, how he seemed distracted and distant. I felt the weight of their observations, the unspoken questions that hung in the air. I couldn't let this spiral any further. I needed to create space, to put an end to the growing tension before it consumed us both. I decided to take a step back, to limit our interactions and give him the room he needed to recalibrate. But the distance only seemed to intensify his feelings. He began leaving notes for me, small messages expressing his confusion and admiration. Each note was a reminder of the fragile situation we were in, a situation that demanded resolution. One evening, after the rest of the family had gone to bed, Ethan approached me again. This time, his demeanor was different. He was calm, composed, and resolute. He told me he understood the importance of boundaries and that he was committed to moving past his feelings. He apologized for putting me in such a difficult position and thanked me for being patient with him. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It seemed we'd finally turned a corner, that the storm had passed. But as the days went on, I couldn't shake the memory of the intensity we'd shared. It lingered in the back of my mind, a reminder of how easily the lines between right and wrong could blur. Life gradually returned to normal, and the tension between us began to dissipate. Ethan found new interests and distractions, and our interactions became less charged, but the experience left an indelible mark on me. It was a lesson in the complexity of human emotions, in the power of boundaries, and the importance of self-awareness. In the end, I'm grateful we were able to navigate the situation without causing lasting damage. It was a reminder that even in the most intense and challenging moments, there's always a way forward, a way to find clarity and resolution.